Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Note the Past. I'm so excited to have Robert Buelteman as my guest today. You're going to hear some incredible information about Robert's passion, his mission in life. We're going to spend time celebrating his monograph, The Unseen Peninsula, which he published back in the mid 90s. Robert actually was granted solo access to the Crystal Springs watershed. And in fact, if any of you are traveling on 280 from Woodside, up to San Bruno, this is the watershed. And this is where Robert got to spend years photographing this wonderful landscape. And it appears in his monograph, The Unseen Peninsula, which, as I said, is going to be our topic. This came about because Cindy and I were hiking the Peninsula open space reservoir, and I thought, oh my God, we haven't talked to Rob Buelteman in so long. Let me see if I can connect with him, and let's see if he'll come on the podcast. And Robert literally answered my text in 30 minutes. So we've had a wonderful time reconnecting after 30 years of us having spent time together. So I want to read this very quickly. I saw this in doing some research on Rob, and I think it's a wonderful summary of his accomplishments and his contributions. Rob was granted, excuse me, I said that already. Robert Buelteman has been making photographs for nearly 5 decades and has been honored with more than a dozen artist residencies, including the Santa Fe Institute, the Jurassic Resident Artist Program, and Stanford University. And all of this is on his website, which I'll include when I post our podcast. The Unseen Peninsula was awarded a gold medal by the National Resources Defense Council and a silver medal by the Commonwealth Club of California. Buelteman received a certificate of congressional recognition from the United States Congress as well. So welcome, Rob. It's great to have you.
It's great to be here, and especially nice to reconnect in our long friendship. So
yeah, it was wonderful. It was back in the mid 90s when your book came out that you allowed us, Danny Sullivan and I, to co-produce a slide presentation at the old 2030 restaurant, Redwood City. And we had a wonderful time. And then connecting with your lovely wife, Julie, who is an artisan in her own right, just making wonderful, beautiful jewelry. So I'm looking forward to us getting together again. So let's start a little bit about your philosophy, Rob, that and part of that's probably going to have to do with your past too and how you came to the watershed. But in your monograph and in the introduction, Robert McDonald, who you've shared was a friend of yours, wrote, "Light, the source of life, is the medium of Robert Buelteman's art. His vision is an inspiration. His photographs, like all works of art, are statements about the meaning of life and of art itself." What does that mean for you, Rob?
Yeah, Robert McDonald was more than a friend. He was kind of a mentor for me. He brought me up in the world of art, having spent most of my life previous as a commercial photographer. Taught me how to be, taught me how to write and speak, was a wonderful influence on me. I think we have all had those moments that seemingly are out of time. Those moments when we behold something. For a lot of people, it's the birth of a child. Many, it's the death of a parent. These moments that are life-shaping, where the clock seems to stop and we feel profoundly connected with all that is, the wheel of life, the simple beauty of an oak tree, a moment in the redwood forest where you consider the 2,000-year lifespan of a living thing and how life must show up for that organism versus us in our 80-year lifespan. Those moments, which I first experienced as a young man with my father, who was a great lover of the outdoors, I wanted to somehow bottle, capture those moments and share them with the others, because those were moments where I felt transcendent to my own circumstances. I didn't feel like little Robbie Buelteman. I felt like I was a part of all that is, and discovered in the first couple rolls of photographs I made that here was a way to capture those moments, to make in order to make them real for other people, to empower other people to open their eyes and their hearts to this wonder that is life.
It is absolutely beautiful. And for those of you that may not have seen the book, this is, or the monograph. Funny, Rob and I were just talking about that term. This is the book. And not only does it have his photographs, or plates, as he calls them, and I love that word. It's got beautiful quotations of people who have been involved in the watershed, who have written about the watershed for decades. So I can't wait for us to get into it in more detail. But let's talk first, before we do that, a little bit about black and white photography. You have worked in so many different mediums, but the Unseen Peninsula is exclusively black and white. At one point in time, you said, the challenge of pursuing mastery in making a fine black and white print in the dark room continues to have its allure for this analog photographer. Expand on that a little bit.
Yeah, my students at the Art Institute used to call me Professor Analog, which was not really a compliment, but I took it as such. I think the digital revolution is wonderful. I'm not against anything. I think that's terrific. However, the demands in working with film and paper are immense compared to digital image capture. You can get away with murder behind the camera and fix it post-production in Photoshop and other software. Terrific, especially if I were still working for hire. That would be a godsend to be able to correct your mistakes. But there's something wonderfully challenging about being in the field, having to carefully measure the light values, which will determine the light values in the field determine how long you will process the film and what kind of paper you will print it on. So technically, it's infinitely more difficult than shoot, then use your sliders on the computer. So I enjoy that. I'm at an age where I'm no longer looking for the shortest distance between 2 points. I want the journey between those 2 points to be rich and rewarding. And as somebody who's always had a passion for design, engineering, science, it's a perfect fit for me.
Well, you know, what's interesting about that is you and I, when we were prepping for this event, we talked about Neil Young, and the fact that I'm a fanatic, his music, everybody that knows me knows that. And you're a lover of his music as well. But he has long been a proponent of analog versus digital music, just the quality of it. So I thought that was interesting, the corollary between your art in black and white photography and his art and music.
Yeah, we are both what you would call a devotee. We are both devoted to traditional analog recording, capture, and that's not to say it makes it easier. I mean, the work behind me here, my recent work, this cameraless work, took over 8,000 sheets of film to finish 128 images over a period of 25 years. And that's not always fun. It sounds very romantic, especially in the context of art and the rest. But I am more interested now in fulfillment than I am success, if that makes sense.
That totally makes sense. Um, so, black and white photography, quotations that resulted in the unseen peninsula. Let's go down that that path for a few moments.
Sure.
What was your inspiration for the unseen peninsula? Sort of talk a little bit about how this developed or unfolded.
Really very simple. We all have childhood dreams, or I would hope we're all raised in a secure enough environment. Those of us in the first world, another outdated term, but the privileged class, we didn't have to worry about food or a roof over our head or going to school. We had dreams. My dream was occasioned by the second or third home my family had in Woodside. My family moved to Woodside in 1954 when a lot of the roads were still dirt. It was not the Woodside of today. And my father built our family the dream house that he always wanted, high on a hill on Lanning Drive, overlooking the San Andreas Valley and looking at the watershed. And my dad and I camped a lot. And I remember one day saying, I want to go back there. I said, what's back there? There's no houses back there. And he said, no, they don't allow anybody back there ever. And of course, I don't know, 6, 8, 10 years old and, completely hooked at that point. And from that day on, I kept wondering about how to get behind those fences on the watershed. And some of my more gregarious friends would jump the fences and go back there. But, I pictured a month of chopping wood if I got caught doing that. My father was a real disciplinarian. And but the dream never died. I grew up. I started my own business in San Francisco, providing large photographic murals to large companies. I made an 8 by 50 foot mural of the San Francisco Bay Bridge, half constructed for Bechtel, which was in their foyer for years. Now they took it with them when they moved out of the city. So that dream continued. I then partnered with the great photographer Fred Lyon, who recently passed away, and was in his studio for 20 years. And I got married in 83, started with Fred in 84. And in about 84, I told him, I said, gee, I always wanted to do this, but I'm not having any fun. And he said, what do you mean? I said, well, I'm making really great money and I'm got these terrific clients and I'm doing, fulfilling on my mission, but there's no joy in it. And he said, I can tell you why. I said, yeah, what's that? He said, you're just doing it for the money. You were never doing it for the money. You did it because you loved the craft. You loved making photographs. And I thought about that. And I thought, if I could do anything in the world, what would I do? And that childhood dream came to mind. And I thought, I got to get behind those fences. And that set in process a series of flat out rejections from the San Francisco Water Department that owns the property. As one person said to me, laughingly, you got to be kidding. We want to keep people out of here. And you want to make photographs of how great it is back here to share with the public, which would make our lives miserable. No, we're not going to let you back here. So long story short, the secretary of one of my commercial clients, I was telling him one day about my frustration about getting on the Watershed, a company in San Mateo. And as I was leaving, his secretary, who I'd befriended, she said, hey, Rob, my father is the superintendent of the Crystal Springs watershed.
Oh my God.
I said, you're kidding me. So she gave me his name. I wrote him a letter, received a very polite no from his people again. And I couldn't let it go. So I finally got his phone number at home. I'm a strategizer. I'll leave him a message on his voicemail, right? So I call him at home on a Wednesday afternoon to leave a message. I'm pleading with, can I just come and meet with you, And he picks up the phone, Ed Fonseca. I said, Ed, this is Robert Buelteman. What are you doing at home? And he said, oh, we told you, you can't, you can't go back there. Okay, fine. What are you doing at home on a Wednesday? Back in the day when we all worked 9 to 5 Monday.
Right.
And he says, well, I was up at the O'Shaughnessy Dam in Yosemite, and there was this shot that I was trying to get, and I tripped over the tripod and broke my leg.
Oh, jeez.
And I thought, Kismet, link, there it is. Yeah. So we talked about photography for probably 45 minutes or so. And he said, well, come on in and we'll talk. So I went in, I got a permit for one day. And I had this dream of I had the dream of the unseen peninsula, not as a book, just as a body of work. And eventually I wore them down. After one day, I went back to get a permit for another day, and another day, and another day. And as you know, institutionally, especially with a city-owned enterprise, there's reams of paperwork for any permit. And eventually his secretary said, look, I'm going to give you this permit for a week. Okay, fine. Week after week after week. That led to a month. And that led to a 6-month permit, led to a year permit, led to a 3-year permit. I was on the property for over 10 years. Made some 6,000 exposures, of which 50 were selected for the book. So that was the genesis of it.
Wow, that is just amazing. And the title is so perfect. How did you come up with the title?
I don't recall, to be honest with you. The genesis of the book was kind of a different course. I was doing the work for my health, for my mental health. And it allowed me to fall back in love with my life's work. I didn't show anybody any photographs. I didn't show my mentor. I didn't show my wife. I didn't show my coach, Bob McDonald. I showed it to no one because it was mine. It was private. And when I looked at the totality of the work, it was very close to being a complete, cogent statement of my relationship with the land and this particular place. And so I had an exhibition in my studio in the South of Market and invited all my commercial clients and my friends and family, a petite affair. Mm-hmm. And to my utter astonishment, we sold lots of prints. And then a gallery, the famous Vision Gallery on Mission Street in San Francisco, which was the home of photographic art in San Francisco. They picked me up, and I had a solo exhibition there, and that started the ball rolling. And the people that saw the exhibit said, this should be a book. And that was feedback I got consistently, and eventually decided that I would attempt to get the book published. And that's where that all began.
That's an amazing story. When again, you and I were talking before, I said, geez, I'm interested in, how you did it. You talked about a little bit of the permit process, and you've talked about the making of the book, and we're going to get into that also. But can we go behind the scenes a little bit? And you said something like, oh, so you want to know how the sausage was made, huh? And I am interested. Danny and I and Cindy, we have run and hiked the trails in Huddard and the Flagler Estate. In fact, this was not legal. We did run up the fire trail once to the top. So we did hop the fence one time, Rob.
Right.
But so those were trails, but how did you do it? How did you coordinate your shots and all that thicket and the shrub and everything. What, was there a schedule that you followed?
Well, for starters, it's a much more difficult place to make photographs than one might imagine. It's untrimmed, it's uncleaned, and has been that way for well over 100 years. So, so it was a much greater challenge than I thought it would be. I started by the sweet light that happens for the kind of photography that I do is an hour before or after sunset, an hour before or after sunrise.
Okay.
So, and winter light is much more dramatic, much more beautiful than summer light. If you picture something simple like a tree in a field, and the sun is straight up over it, you got the tree, the sky, and the shadow on the ground. It's very ordinary, very soulless, if you will. In the winter, when the sun is low on the horizon, just like it is at sunrise and sunset, the sweet light happens all day long. So I tended to shoot more in the winter, less in the summer. And, you know, a typical day would be wake up at 4, get on the road by 5. Depending on what I had in mind, I would either drive over Highway 92 and go north or south in the San Andreas Valley from there. But my favorite thing to do, though it was very time consuming, would be to leave here and drive dirt roads from my home on the coast in Montera all the way up over Scarpa Ridge, down into the Pilarcitos Canyon, and then up over Pilarcitos Ridge, and then down into the lakes. Very time consuming. The road here in Montera is a 4-wheel drive road, but that never stopped my rear wheel drive Vanagon camper, which, you know, were designed by Germany for World War II to be go anywhere vehicles, and they do. So I would start early and I would bring food and coffee with me and have my breakfast on the road. And on a good morning, I could get a morning shoot in and then end up in the studio by 9 or so to do the work that would pay the bills. And the southern part of the watershed adjacent to Woodside and Filoli, the Filoli property, which is connected by the old Stagecoach Road that used to run from, there were 2 roads between San Francisco and San Jose in the 1850s. One was the El Camino Real, which everybody knows, the historic road. The other was the Stagecoach Road, and that ran down the San Andreas Valley, through Filoli, which didn't exist at the time, through the town of Woodside and down to San Jose. So one of the most fun aspects of this book was I had to come up with the quotes opposite the photographs. And when you consider the property has been off limits for over 100 years, it's very hard to find writers that had written about this particular land. So I gained access to the rare books department at the San Francisco Library and was able to go through those. And one of the quotes opposite the photograph of the Stagecoach Road is that in 1849, the 8-hour trip from San Francisco to San Jose cost $32 cash or 1 ounce of gold bullion. So picture that in modern dollars. And it was a stage road.
Yeah.
So being on that property, part of what I did on every time I was back there, I mentally worked very hard to connect with the time in which this place was created. Because I love history, and there's a richness in that that's just not available in the day-to-day life of driving 75 miles an hour down 280. So
well, you know, there was so many of those quotations, and for those of you who do have the book, I'd invite you to go back and look at it, because I've felt so deeply just by revisiting it. And those of you that don't have it, I suggest you get it. But I think it was Tom Steenstra that one of his quotes in there was something like, this place, the watershed, was for old souls who like old things. And I just absolutely love that.
Yes, he and the then executive director of the Peninsula Open Space Trust, Audrey Rust, she and I took Tom back on the property at a time where there was, I don't really remember what our agenda was, but I also know that he ended up writing a couple stories about the property and the book.
You know, some people may not fully understand, and I don't want to offend anyone, but you know what a watershed does. And I imagine, given the years that you spent on the property and the different times of days and seasons, you got a sense for water and a watershed. Can you describe a little bit about that?
Sure. A watershed is any piece of land that has a common drainage point.
Mm-hmm.
So the watershed for Northern California is the entire Sierras and Central Valley, as well as the Coast Ranges and so on. They all drain through a single point, San Francisco Bay, under the Golden Gate Bridge. So our watershed, our subject watershed, all drains down San Mateo Creek, which is the creek that runs under the flying bridges on Interstate 280 in San Mateo there. So our watershed was a necessary development for the creation of the city of San Francisco. Everybody knows about the 1906 quake and the fire that burned the city to the ground. What most people don't know is that was the sixth fire that had burned the city of San Francisco to the ground.
No
and it
kidding.
did so always for the same reason, was that there's no water there. San Francisco, everything from Twin Peaks to the ocean is all sand. There's no water there. So when it rains, the water goes into the sand. It doesn't flow out in creeks that are dammable or controllable, with a couple exceptions. Ansel Adams' beloved Lobitos Creek up near the Presidio is an exception. So the owner of the Empire Mine, who were, I forget the number, it's in the book, something like 20 million ounces of gold and silver taken out over its time. When they got tired of roughnecking in the mine countries, they moved to San Francisco. And the first thing they discovered was that there wasn't any water there. So he eventually talked his way into buying the Spring Valley Water Company, which was the only source of water in the city, and discovered that it was completely insufficient for the needs of what was the city, not to mention what he dreamed of, the San Francisco that we know now. So he surreptitiously sent out teams to investigate the peninsula to see where they might get some more water. And I think we all know about the water wars that continue to this day, witness the fires in Los Angeles, the booming pistachio business, which is largely owned by one couple who have commandeered most of the water of the Central Valley. That continues in California. But he spied this absolutely gorgeous watershed and set about buying up the land. And he did it surreptitiously through a number of, I don't know if he used names or companies or what, but by the time people realized there was a land grab going on, it was a little late. And of course, he's the one that built Filoli, Fight, Love, and Live, William Bowers Bourne.
Right.
And his lawyer was Flager of the Flager estate.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah. So they bought up that land very wisely.
Yeah.
And they started with damming Pilarcitos Creek, which is the creek that runs under Highway 92. When you go up over 92 and then down where it's several lanes there, and then it gets to the valley floor and is 2 lanes into Half Moon Bay. Just before it gets to the valley floor, Pillarcitos Creek runs underneath there. Okay. So they built Pillarcitos Dam and then built a state-of-the-art tunnel. This is in the 1800s, through the ridge and to the bay side of the mountain, and then flumed the water all the way to San Francisco. And that was the first water source for San Francisco. And then, of course, it continued with the water company constantly promising the city, hey, if you fund all this development, we'll sell you the water company. And of course, once it got going well, it took them several decades to reach an agreement for them to sell that to San Francisco.
Yeah.
But that's, basically the story of the watershed.
Yeah. And again, a lot of that water is piped in now from Hetch Hetchy and Yosemite as well, right?
That was a further extension. They got the rights to the Hetch Hetchy Valley and dammed it. And it's a point of great grief for organizations like the Sierra Club, for the great environmentalist John Muir, who saw the second Yosemite Valley dammed for the convenience of building a city, and a source of great pain in the environmental community. And yet that water is what feeds the infrastructure of the city and some of the suburbs.
So I showed that one photo from the monograph. It's just absolutely beautiful. How did you select the 50 that appear? And before you jump on, let me say that, or jump in, Rob's photos from the Unseen Peninsula adorn several restaurants here on the peninsula that we're familiar with. I wouldn't say starting, but certainly at the old 2020 restaurant, 2020 Broadway, where Danny and Jan Sullivan owned it. The beautiful, beautiful prints were up on their walls. And then Town Restaurant in San Carlos, Milagros in Redwood City, and Mistral. Out in Aventuras, right?
And they used to be in the Village Pub. When the Village Pub moved from upstairs on Woodside Road downstairs, they were so wonderful. They gave me the blueprints and said, if you could do anything in the world, what would you do? So I was able to lay it out to perfection in my mind. And they changed their interior about 6 years ago and removed the work. But and that is, it's not a business model I would recommend for anyone, but that's my business now, is I make prints.
Yeah.
I no longer take commissions, but from the several books that I have in print, I still print and have had over 70 solo exhibitions over the last 40 years and continue to share the work that way. As far as how I picked them, Chris, it's a strange thing, but I feel like in making my art, in my best moments, I'm not there as an identity, as Robert Buelteman. In my best moments, the most I can do is to get out of the way of what wants to happen. And when I'm successful at doing that, I feel deeply connected to that quality that we were talking about earlier, where I'm not there as a person. I am a part of a wonderful flow, the flow of life. People ask me all the time, how did you select those images, or how did you get those photographs? It starts by showing up and being an opening, mind open, eyes bright, heart vulnerable. When what's life got for me today?
Mm-hmm.
Because I have to tell you, if you look at my website, the landscape photographs on this website, those things don't happen when you're on the way to a meeting. They don't
Right.
happen when you are concerned about your own little agenda. Not to diminish people's agenda, but whatever you've got compared to the grandeur and the totality of life and living, it's always a small slice.
Right.
So for me, it's about enlarging myself to be worthy of something extraordinary showing up. And, most of the time, that's too tall an order. Sometimes I'm just cold and I want to go home.
Yeah.
Sometimes I'm hungry. Sometimes, I've had an argument with one of my sons, or, who knows? All
Right.
those things that take us away from being present to the privilege and the joy of being alive.
Oh, that
So,
is just beautiful.
so selecting the images, it's the same thing. It doesn't. It's not it's not an intellectual process.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I'll give you an example. It's better to do that. The 18 Days in June book that I did to raise money for the Jurassic Resident Artist Program, that was published in the year 2000. There it is. And I storyboard things. Behind me, you can see there's some photographs up on a wall.
Mm-hmm.
That's a 4 by 12 foot long magnetic wall. And I storyboard things up there because just like music, a book needs to have, I think successful books need to have a musicality to them. They need to have moments of staccato, moments of resonance, moments of rhythm, moments of quiet. Quiet is very important. The image that you like so much, the Reeds and Water, is a moment of silence in the book where there's, oh, here's this and here's that. And then there's this moment of rest. So anyway, so I had the whole 18 Days in June book storyboarded. This is back in 1998, I guess. And there was something missing. And I didn't know what it was, which is always the case when something is missing. You have a sense of it. Yeah, there's Reeds and Water.
Can you see it?
A little higher. There you go. Reeds and Water,
Yeah.
San Andreas Lake.
Beautiful.
So, so we had storyboarded. Robert McDonald, my editor and coach, who also did the Unseen Peninsula, we'd storyboarded it out. And there was something missing and something missing, something missing. So I was sitting in the studio by myself, no other influences. And I kept thinking, well, what's the problem? It's really terrific. It's great. It's enough. What's missing? So I started looking through my proof sheets and I found this beautiful image of a waterfall on Harrington Creek that runs through the Jurassic Resident Artist Program on the west side of Kings Mountain. And that was it. I didn't know why. It just, it said to me, here I am. And so I put it up. And a few days later, Dale Jurassic, Carl Jurassic's son, with whom I partnered to get the book published for the program, was over. And he was very familiar with, he's been working, shoulder to shoulder with me. And he looks and he says, where did that come from? And I said, oh, yeah. There was something missing. I found this. I put it up there. The artist program was created because his sister, Pamela Jurassic, took her own life at the ranch. And in the family's grief, they created this artist program to benefit art and creativity. And Dale looked at it and teared up and he said, that's where we scattered Pammy's ashes.
What a connection.
And such things are possible, not for Robert Buelteman, but when you are an opening, when you are deeply committed to making art that wants to be fully self-expressed.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so the works in the Unseen Peninsula, they all put their hand up and called out to me and said, I'm the one. And we looked through it, and I had two excellent editors, or through actually several. My wife, Julie, who I look to for everything. My mentor, Fred Lyon, one of the greatest photographers of the last century. Robert McDonald, and me, who gets to take the slings and arrows, especially when, you know, you get attached to something and they say, oh, this doesn't fit. What do you mean it doesn't fit? You know, there was some of that, but I was wise enough to listen to their critique and also to listen with my heart.
Well, what a powerful story of the Cherassi family. It's a very moving, powerful story. And, you know, to hear you talk about how the photos came about, again, a connection back to musicians, and you already made it, but just to amplify for a second here, you know, Neil Young and Bob Dylan have talked about, you know, the music comes through me. It comes to me. I don't create. I don't create the muse. It's out there. Bob Dylan was interviewed saying, "I don't know where those early songs came from." It's just it's fascinating. So your connection between, you know, your art and photography and the art and music is a very interesting and a sort of a heartwarming one.
To get back to the digital analog divide, that's part of the problem, in my estimation. Don't want to offend any digital photographers out there, because that's all of us, including me.
Yeah.
But when you are allowed with impunity to fool around with a photograph, contrast, color balance, shadow values, highlight values, and now with AI, you are inserting yourself at every imaginable level with the idea that you know best.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't always have a good outcome.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, good point. I won't repeat that Coco Chanel quote that you have on your website, but you just described it. So publishing
Chanel,
the book.
Everybody's going to want to know Coco Chanel. Coco Chanel, when people ask me about the images I make with no cameras or lenses or computers, they say, did you invent this? And I respond, as Coco Chanel did, only those with no memory insist on their own originality. And I'm very clear about that. There's nothing new under the sun.
Yeah, what a great quote that was. That's just a wonderful quote. So the book itself, Robert, just spend a minute because the monograph, you know, it looks like a normal book, but my goodness, the printing and the paper that was used is elegant, and it resonates with the subject of the watershed. What was that inspiration all about?
I'm pretty single-minded about how I go about things, as you may have noticed. And I was unable to secure a publisher. I was a young man at the time. I'm also not a joiner. So I don't have, my art is my only credential. And eventually I decided I would self-publish, and was able to raise the cost of the printing, and therefore was able to control every single aspect of it, which is my nature. Mm-hmm. And so retained a publishing supervisor, had the book printed in Milan by one of the great Italian printers on heavyweight paper, a 6-plate black and white. Tritone, which is 3 plates, is considered state of the art. That's how all Ansel's posters and so on were done. Mm-hmm. Ansel Adams. Yeah. So this is 6 plates, 4 plates of black and 2 plates of varnish to give the book the appearance of a silver gelatin print to make it look real. I'm really glad I did it. It was in terms of a business, where you're concerned about your bottom line, was a fool's errand. But I was fortunate in that the 4 people that stepped up to fund the book shared my vision. We got the book printed. It won over a dozen awards back in 1995. Sold out within a year and a half. I have a few of the gallery edition versions, which come with a clamshell and an original print in the book. But other than that, they're all gone. I would recommend anyone who wants to purchase one to look at used bookstores, Amazon used books, and so on. I regularly find them there and often purchase, yes, that one's in a slipcase.
Right.
And often purchase them just to make gifts, and especially, when you want to influence people, it's nice to give them a book. So it's one of several that I have.
So you've got some upcoming events. We were talking about how you're preparing for it, but one of them, and again, this will be in the notes to the podcast when I publish it. But your website is www.robertbuelteman.com. Isn't that right?
It's Buelteman.com. Buelteman.com. Yes.
But all of this is there. But on March 7th, Rob is going to be at the Woodside Independence Hall. And as you can see here, hopefully, where he's going to talk about the Woodside Treasure, the Jurassic Resident Artist Program on March 7th, coming up shortly. And he has graciously agreed to come and talk about the Unseen Peninsula at the speaker series for the Atherton Library, and that will be hopefully May 1st. So we're very excited about that. One of the things I'd like to close with here, Robert, is that to a degree, this podcast is a tribute for Danny Sullivan. Introducing us to those hikes and trails in Huddard and Flagler and going up the fire trail in the watershed. And I know you worked with Danny too, so I just wanted to throw that in. But I also want to say thank you so much for agreeing to come on today, and I look forward, as does Cindy, to getting together with you and Julie in the future.
Absolutely. And thank you for the opportunity to speak about my work. As I've grown older, my health has not been great of late. And there's something that gives me great joy to be able to tend my flock and reappreciate the journey that it's been. So thank you very much for the invitation.
Great, Rob. We'll talk soon.
Sounds great.